Tens of thousands of football fans came to Highbury. Electrifying!
Yes, guys, welcome back to the Cannon Podcast and another episode of Scouted. If you're watching us for the first time on YouTube, make sure you subscribe and do all that good stuff. We've got loads of episodes of Scouted. We've probably done like 20 at this point on various players, on Sesko and Nico Williams and Ekatike and all these sorts of players. It's a really fun deep dive into the players with clips. We go on a scouting platform and have a look at clips and sort of playlists and stuff like that. So you can check that out from the link in the description. And we'll be doing lots more over the summer as the something called the transfer window might be kicking into gear, George. I don't know if you've heard of it, but we are here to talk about Lucien Agoumé, who is someone that George has been propping for a long time. Really interesting scouted episode. I sort of went in with it with a perception of him. Probably didn't massively change, but actually that's probably what we want to talk about in terms of the player. If you're unfamiliar with Lucien Agoumé, he is a 23-year-old French youth international. We were saying on the Scouted that being in France U21s isn't a bad thing. It's a real achievement at this point, considering their setup. He plays as a midfielder for Sevilla. He's gone through many different clubs, came through the Inter Milan setup. I think at one point in sort of 1920, Barcelona and Man City were looking around. He's had a bit of a sort of a period. He's been to Spezia, been to Brest, been to Troyes, all these sorts of places. Actually, I'm not going to try the French pronunciation because I always get it wrong. Very, very quick headline from me before I jump to you, because he's your boy. I really like this player in terms of the domination he shows. I think you said it on the Scout, and I think it's a perfect way of putting it. He knows who he is. This is a player who is a 6. He's going to remain as a 6. I think it's some versatility, maybe in fullback and centre back, which we could talk about. But in terms of dominating that space, being clever, in terms of usage of his body, in terms of the dual capacity, in terms of, I hate to use the word, but aura that he shows on the pitch in terms of dominating those middle third spaces, he's really got it. And I think we were watching this like loose duel playlist. I don't think he lost one. He's a real dominator of that space. Maybe has some limitations, but yeah, talk to us about your highlights and why you like Lucien Agoumé.
Yeah, he is. He's somebody with high energy, very focused mentality, and a really kind of consistent technical ability that I think makes for, as far as player comparisons go, I really compare him to Romeo Lavia, but fit. And he's somebody that is, again, 6'2", and, just a little add on some of the youth setups that you're talking about with France. He also captained, by the way, several of those youth teams. So as far as the leadership goes, you can tell he's somebody, we were watching, and you're like, he has that aura in build-up in which you feel safe.
Sorry to say, but he does. He has it. Yeah. It's his space. It's his space. Yeah.
And I think part of that, though, is in the preparation to which he receives when he builds. It's phenomenal. Like the scanning, the spatial recognition, and he's not somebody that is running like his head's loose constantly to chase the ball. He is letting the ball do the work and making very smart movements off the ball to make himself incredibly available. And he can receive off both feet. He's somebody that if you fire the ball into him, he's no problem passing first touch into the defender with his weak foot. He's somebody that I just feel is very efficient in build-up. And, I had this thing where I was talking about when I was coaching, I used to have this demand of my players in which the first second is the scan, the picture, second is the receive, third second is the pass. And Agoumé does this. It's very rare that you see Agoumé really hold on to the ball longer than he needs to. It's very much release efficiently. And the higher up the pitch he goes, the more adventurous he gets with his passing. And he's got just such a brilliant technique. The only thing I would say is he needs to be a bit more willing to play those passes. And I think, he is so dominant defensively and he's such a brilliant technique. It almost runs into a case of, mate, like you're really good, start playing like a superstar. Like you don't have to constantly play for other people. And he does it. He's very selfless in the way that he plays, but he can be a star. But he doesn't really want it. You know that you look at it and he's not necessarily a spotlight player, but he does an 11 out of 10 pass. And then you're like, well, you've got it in your locker. Show it more. Be more adventurous. Yeah. But there's a case of, I have maybe questions whether or not Sevilla, that's the place, the game model to do it. As far as weaknesses go, really quickly, he doesn't have as much attacking impetus in his body that I want him to have. And what I mean by that is, he has technique, but he doesn't show the goals for it. He needs to improve a little bit of that. And as far as his long passing goes right now, good technique, but passes to the opposition far more than I'd like to see. I think he needs to get a bit better as far as making sure he's making the right decisions, when to switch, who to switch to. because he's got the technique, but far too often it's a turnover. It's not very consistent as far as him actually hitting the man. He's hitting to the opposition, not the space or the player.
Yeah, I think in terms of goal contribution for a guy of his sort of physical domination in a certain area of the pitch, I think we were talking about the sort of the set piece domination and maybe adding a couple of goals. I do think Partey's a good comparison to some degree in terms of his progression, in terms of peak, that sort of that peak Partey 22-23 where that's just his zone. You can't get it off him in that zone. He sort of has that. And something that I really liked about Agoumé as well, and something that I picked up from the clips, I think you see that aura. But actually, it's because he wants to use the space. He doesn't want to use his body. He will do it, but he doesn't have to. He doesn't have to use his body. He's quick. He's turning. He's dropping into the right spaces. He's facilitating a build up. He will get across you and he will use his body, but he's not reliant on that. I think that's why he looks so good. But yeah, I think in terms of the weaknesses, is there a better place than Arsenal to develop your set piece prowess? But maybe not. But I think that probably something in there. Probably something in the sort of the goal contributions. He as you said in the scout, he's not a head of the ball, take it on the half turn, short spaces type player. That's just not who he is. But if you're looking for a 6 and a 6-6-6, he is not in the devil way. He's really good. Let's skip over to the tactics board actually first before we go to his data. I think this is probably the most interesting thing, because we've got an interesting situation developing at Arsenal. Maybe we should do some content on it at some point. In terms of in the midfield, who we have, where Jorginho and Partey are going, what we do with Miles, when areas is Zubimendi coming in, what do we do with Rice? There's a lot, Odegaard, there's a lot of moving parts. Even Havertz dropping back into the midfield potentially if we sign a forward. So the midfield, weirdly, is maybe the most fluid area of the pitch right now, even because we know what our right winger is going to be. Do you know what I mean? So it's maybe arguably the three. It could be a big area of change. So yeah, talk us through what you think Agoumé would be. I know you've talked about him as a partner for Rice, and I think that's a good shout.
Yeah, I think, look, Agoumé can do this whole Partey partnership that Rice has had, and especially as far as dropping into the right center back, and maybe not necessarily a Timber, but like a little bit more of a White if he was kind of stretching the pitch a little bit, and Odegaard wanted to drop in. Like Agoumé can drop into the right center back and play this kind of mold, no problem. He can do this really quite easily. As far as him being just
look at his heat map, sorry, quickly, just for La Liga and Sevilla, it's all that right hand side.
Yeah, absolutely. And as far as even if we have Timber kind of come back, and we have what we've typically known, Agoumé is that lone six. Right, like he'll operate, and Odegaard can come in, and we'll see a lot of things that we've already known. I think the big thing when I look at the impact on a Rice, though, is one thing that I could see just a little bit more broadly is, especially when we're in the final third. Okay, and I'll get everybody up on the pitch. Probably want to switch out White for this because I want him a little bit more touchline than I do Timber.
Did you hate him? Got you.
I do. And I think one thing that you'll maybe look at, by the way, is Agoumé may be the one to stay, and Rice may be the one to really step up in the middle of the pitch, right? And so when we bring everybody up, this gives the opportunity for Rice to be somebody that can maybe be on the edge of the box and get in over here and be a little bit more adventurous, because Agoumé is somebody that can hold the fort down, no problem. This is a really dominant spatial 6, right? And so I think the only maybe question marks you might have too is, like, even when Calafiori goes up a little bit, Agoumé has no problem slotting into this zone, by the way, and covering the space for a Calafiori. Or if you really want, again, we can take this out and have Miles come in, and Miles be somebody between the lines. This is something that you can see, like Agoumé. Between Agoumé and Rice, you've got a really dominant pivot. Now, I think the thing that I really like between all of this, by the way, and we'll just get some people back to where they would be, where if we had Calafiori starting, right, and we'll throw everyone back in this pivot mold. If we wanted to maybe give Rice a break, and we had a Zubimendi, this now, for me, becomes a really complementary pivot. And Agoumé is somebody that can play where, you can have Zubimendi play a little bit higher up, with Martin Odegaard in these half spaces, and you can have Calafiori come in again, top pivot that will work beautifully together. Calafiori is more of a runner that can come in. Agoumé can fill in that spot when Calafiori leaves. Additionally, Miles, if you do want to play him as kind of a left back, again, another pivot that makes just a lot of sense in this box midfield, I would call it, to allow Zubimendi to be a little bit higher up the pitch. Now, I think the big question that a lot of people will have is just how does this affect maybe the Mikel Merino of it all? And I actually think he's the biggest loser with this type of signing because it makes him a little bit redundant in a sense, because we've got two people that now can play with each other as far as buys go, but also this is a player that can play with, of course, Declan, who will be starting quite a bit, or can be on the pitch to allow Zubimendi to come in, for example. And when we see this, I'll just end on this kind of thing with the tactics board. This is kind of a setup that I think most of the low blocks will see as far as, maybe your... Even your mid blocks, like as far as Aston Villa's potentially, but as far as maybe your Leicesters, your Southamptons, if they were to come up, like the Ipswich, those type of games in which we're really penning opposition, and you can see this midfield three kind of thriving. However, if you're talking about a Nottingham Forest, by the way, you're talking about an Everton away at Goodison Park, this is a midfield that I'd probably prefer to see. And the debate is, I think we need to move past. I don't see Agoumé or Zubimendi, by the way, coming in and being perfect for every single game state. But together, they split to really make sure that Arsenal are covered. And in the rare case that, Rice is injured, we finally got somebody that can play and can be that spatial complement to the rest of the guys here. And I should probably get back a left back here. But we have somebody in midfield, right, that can be the wheels, the runner, the legs to come in if Rice is injured. And we have that flexibility.
Yeah. I think just two things before we go on to the data. I think firstly, I just want to highlight the point you were making about the impact it could potentially have. I think someone who is just going to be that guy who's just like, I'm going to hold the fort here, you guys go forward. The potential impact that could have on a Rice, on a Ben White, on a Calafiori, on a Miles, on a Saka, where these things that you add someone in the midfield who is really just like, I'm going to be here and I'm going to win every single duel. I think that can the positive impact that can have, and the conversations we always have about how do we get Saka more inside and how do we get him with less defensive contributions. I think he could be part of that. But secondly, I think on the sort of the composition of the midfield, this does make sense. And I kind of said this a little bit at the end. This feels to me like a signing that, like, if all of these things happen and this player develops in that way, sort of it might happen. I think there are links to him, and we've seen the Arsenal keeping tabs on him pretty reliably from various reports. This feels to me like a signing that is like if this happens, if we get a sale for that guy, if that contract gets done, we go for him, because it feels like a bridge. I think you're right about the sort of this idea of a midfield three needs to be set. There is no one in world football who has a set midfield three. There's set pillars in terms of, Rodri will play every game for Man City, but then they switch it out. It's Kovacic, or it's Nunez, or it's Phil Foden inside, it's Rico Lewis inside, wherever, depending on the game. So there has to be sort of a degree of stability and security every single game. Declan Rice. And then the sort of the add-ons, what do we need for that game, which could be an Agoumé. And I think it would be certainly for big space games, as you mentioned, it's a great pickup. Let's look at the data. I just want to look at three things. Firstly, shooting and sort of his sort of contribution in terms of his goal threat. This isn't a guy who's coming in and is going to score, 3 or 4 goals a season, for us. I think that's a development place. I do think, as you mentioned earlier, in terms of his technique and in terms of his actual quality on the ball, I don't think that's an issue. But I think his sniff and smell for goal, his desire to be the guy, is probably not there. But it's something to develop at 23 years old. I think that's something that you can have. In terms of his passing numbers, I don't think I was blown away in terms of when you see these numbers, you're not blown away. but I think this is massively related to where he's playing for Sevilla, what they're asked to do. I think they're a little bit more direct. And actually, when you watch him in the build-up, I think he slots straight in. We talk often about sort of translation, right, on these episodes. There's some players I look at and I go, oh, I think we want to do a Fabio Vieira one soon. It's like, does that translate? And that's the question. Is he fast enough? Is he quick enough with his thought? Is he out of possession? Agoumé is not a player I worry about that at all. And the final thing is just a number I want to show, which is these numbers in terms of his defensive percentage. You can see he's right up there in terms of tackles in the middle third, percentage of dribblers tackled, challenges lost. I think his aerial numbers are really good as well. This is a 6. This is a proper 6 who also, and maybe we should come on to this, we see potential centre-back and full-back sort of qualities there as well for you?
Yeah, he's quite rangy, right? And he's got a big stride. And so you can see him completely slot in as far as, center back, certainly. I think fullback, I might need to see a little bit more attacking development as far as, crossing variety, half space crosses and things of that nature. If I was going to commit to a fullback necessarily, but certainly central center back, certainly slotting into the right center back as a rotation, and build up. We see that quite a bit with Sevilla, and he's got that versatility, and he has the stamina, very aggressive, repeat sprinter. It's just, again, everything with Agoumé is cool, calm, and collected. He's never panicked, which I love. He's got this top speed, but I remember us going through the Y-Scout, like, can we see it? Because he just doesn't use it. He's very intelligent in the way that he positions his body so that he doesn't have to do that. But when he's asked and when he's forced and when he's stretched, Agoumé is rarely somebody that's ever going to be beaten for pace. And so it is kind of that, okay, well, maybe you've got that temperament at center back. And
I'm telling you, I said this on the pod. Long legs just do so much for you, and it's like Gabriel. Like Gabriel, people will take issue at this. Gabriel, if you put his sort of pace in someone else, it doesn't. He's all right. It's how long his legs are, like that just account for everything. I think Agoumé has that. The stride length, he just eats up ground. Let's finish with this. If you want to go check out Agoumé, it's an interesting one, and I like sort of picking out these players. I think we looked at Yusuf Fofana last summer. These sorts of players, where the midfield is going, it's a really interesting one. It's kind of what I wanted to finish on, and also as we mentioned, you've got loads of the scout episodes, etc. So you can check those out from the link in the description for free as well on a 7-day free trial. Not what you would do, not what you would want. Prediction for where this midfield is going, what you think is going to happen from a Mikel perspective. I'll get off the fence first. I think Jorginho and Partey do go this summer. I think that happens. I think we do sign Zubimendi. I think we sign +1. I don't think it's Agoumé. I think it's more of a project. And I think we sign something like a Sfere Naipan project more 10 and Vieira goes. So our midfield would end up being Rice, Ødegaard, Miles and Ethan, Marino, Zubi, and then +2, but more project-y types. I can't see us being able to pull off an Agoumé as well as everything else we need to do, because I think probably, or someone of his ilk, I think we might not have to spend for it, but that's my prediction.
I think there's 4 positions that I'm dead set on the summer. I actually think Zubimendi's pretty much done. I think that's number 2 and Juan Garcia specifically, and then 2 attackers. Yeah. Those are pillars that happen. And then the 5th signing depends on sales and what we can do. And how you mentioned a youth signing, I just think, again, not just what I would do. Like, I think our move is to a true traditional double pivot. And if we are moving to a more traditional double pivot, we need the Partey body. And I actually think that we could use youth signings to do other holes. And, I look at it and I think Fabio Vieira, this is probably one for that scouted. I think he genuinely does stay. I don't think that that's a youth buy, but I think the youth buy that we do is a left back. An overlapping left back is a youth buy. And the fifth signing could be another central midfielder for me, which could be Agoumé, who also doubles as a center back versatility, by the way, because I'm looking at Tomiyasu, who also is within this, where we can't sell, but we need that squad hole. And I look at this signing as somebody that can duel up. in that position. And I think it would be smart. It's a £25 million signing, roughly, or £30 million signing, in my mind, as far as, the value. And I wouldn't go above it. Like, it is a depth signing that I don't need. But if it is going to be the next one, I'm on this kick right now. I really push back on the need for a double 10, even in prospect. Like, I look at Agoumé as a prospect, but as a 6. And, I look at it as building beyond Marino. And for me, Marino has his days numbered in this Arsenal team. Yeah. And so he's just a bridge. And we could look to sell a Marino in 2026 with this. And so I think I'm just slightly different to you, where you've used a youth signing to replace an 8 that you're selling. A 10 that we're selling. I think we keep the 10 that we have, use a youth to buy the left back, and the buy is a Agoumé, essentially, as opposed to a night pen.
Yeah. Personally, I wonder whether the money's there. I don't know, but I mean, if we did do that, I would love that. But yeah, remains to be seen. As we say, go check it out from the link in the description. Thank you, George.
Thank you, good sir.
Thanks so much for watching us. Thank you for supporting us on the Cannon Podcast, and thanks for keeping it Arsenal.